Move. That's my seat. The white businessman's voice cut through first class like a blade, sharp enough to slice through the gentle hum of pre-departure preparations. Dr. Amara Johnson's fingers froze over her laptop keyboard, the quarterly projections blurring as a familiar fire ignited in her chest. Not again. The memory of her first corporate presentation 15 years ago flashed through her mind, standing in a boardroom while executives assumed she was the assistant, not the lead scientist. That same suffocating weight pressed against her ribs now. Flight 447 to Los Angeles thrummed with anticipation at 6:47 p.m., cabin lights casting a golden glow over leather seats and polished surfaces. Gate agents rushed final boarding calls while passengers settled into their domains of privilege. Amara had been quietly reviewing MedTech's expansion plans when Richard Whitmore materialized beside row 2, his manicured finger pointing at seat 2A with the entitlement of someone who'd never been told no. Her boarding pass clearly displayed 2A. His sterling financial briefcase gleamed like armor against perceived threats to the natural order. Flight attendant Jessica hesitated nearby, her trained smile wavering as she recognized the brewing storm. In surrounding seats, passengers lifted phones with the instinct of witnesses to history. An elderly black woman in 3C caught Amara's eye and nodded almost imperceptibly, a silent message of solidarity that said, "I see you, sister." Have you ever been judged completely wrong, but knew the truth would turn the tables in ways they couldn't imagine? Are you absolutely certain you have the right section? Whitmore's tone dripped with decades of practiced condescension, each word carefully weighted to establish hierarchy. He shifted his weight, physically blocking the aisle while his eyes performed a calculated assessment. Simple blazer, jeans, no visible jewelry. His mental mathematics was transparent. She didn't belong here. Amara's breath caught for just a moment, the familiar sting of assumed inadequacy piercing through her professional armor. But beneath that flash of pain, something harder crystallized. She'd built a $2.8 billion empire by turning underestimation into strategic advantage. Her fingers moved deliberately across her keyboard, closing the MedTech Solutions quarterly report that displayed revenue numbers exceeding most small countries' GDP. "I'm in my assigned seat," she replied, her voice carrying the calm that comes from absolute certainty. She held up her boarding pass, the concierge key status gleaming gold in the cabin lighting like a badge of earned authority. 9 minutes until departure, crackled the gate agent's voice through speakers that seemed to echo with mounting tension. Jessica approached with the reluctant steps of someone entering a minefield. Her nameplate caught the overhead light as she bent toward the brewing conflict, years of customer service training warring with unconscious bias in real time. "Is there some confusion about seating?" Whitmore's chest expanded like a peacock displaying plumage. "I travel this route weekly for business," he announced, his voice projecting across the cabin with theatrical precision. Sterling Financial maintains significant contracts with American Airlines. He paused, letting the implication settle like fog. "Perhaps there's been some mistake." The emphasis on mistake landed like a slap. Around them, passengers shifted with the discomfort of witnessing something ugly but familiar. A young woman in 2C quickly opened Instagram Live, whispering urgently to her phone, "Y'all, this is happening right now on Flight 447. This man is trying to steal this sister's seat." Comments began flowing immediately. "Not today, Satan. Get him, sis. Why isn't anyone helping her? Maybe you should check with the gate agent about upgrades," Whitmore continued, his voice carrying across the cabin like a master class in public humiliation. "I'm sure economy has space available." The words hit Amara like ice water, but they also awakened something deeper, the memory of her grandmother's voice. "Baby, when they try to make you small, you remind them how much space you really take up." Amara's phone buzzed with a text from Senator Martinez. Her eyes flicked to the message. Board meeting moved to 7 a.m. Transportation Secretary wants to discuss the discrimination audit. She typed back quickly. Perfect timing. Live case study developing. 7 minutes to departure. In 1D, a silver-haired businessman looked up from his Wall Street Journal with obvious interest, as if watching a fascinating social experiment. The woman across the aisle whispered to her husband about another viral moment in the making, her tone mixing excitement with second-hand embarrassment. Jessica's training kicked in, but her unconscious programming showed clearly. She addressed Whitmore first, her body language deferential. "Sir, if you could show me your boarding pass, I'm sure we can resolve this quickly." Whitmore produced his ticket with the flourish of someone revealing a royal decree. "Seat 2A, first class." Sterling Financial's travel department has booked this exact seat every Friday for the past 3 years. Check your records. 3 years? Amara almost smiled. MedTech had held the 2A preference for 7 years running, part of their comprehensive corporate travel package. But she remained silent, watching the performance unfold. I can see the confusion, Jessica began, examining both boarding passes with the concentration of someone trying to solve quantum physics. Both clearly showed 2A, but her eyes lingered longer on Whitmore's expensive suit than on Amara's quiet confidence. The Instagram Live viewer count climbed, 234, 567, 891. Comments flooded past faster than anyone could read. This is disgusting. Call her out, sis. Someone do something. But it was Amara's next question that changed everything. Jessica, she said quietly, her voice cutting through the tension like a scalpel. What's Captain Williams' full name? I'll need it for my report. The specificity of the request created a vacuum of silence. Jessica's professional smile faltered completely. Your report? 5 minutes to departure. Final boarding call for Flight 447. Whitmore sensed victory approaching like a tide. Look, I don't want to make this difficult for anyone, he said, his voice magnanimous now, the benevolent patriarch solving problems for lesser beings. I'm sure there's another seat that would work better for everyone involved. A passenger in 4A, a young black professional, started to stand, anger flashing in her eyes, but the elderly woman from 3C placed a gentle hand on her arm and shook her head. Wait, her expression said. This woman doesn't need rescuing. Senior flight attendant Mark emerged from the galley like a general summoned to battle, his 23 years of experience and silver wings catching the light. His practiced I made the same calculation everyone else had made, sighed with the loudest, most confident complainant. What seems to be the problem here? Mark's authoritative presence immediately shifted the cabin's energy, conversations stopping mid-sentence. Double booking, Whitmore explained with the smooth confidence of someone accustomed to being believed without question. I fly this route religiously for Sterling Financial. Same seat, same time, every single week. Your colleague can verify my status. Amara's phone buzzed again. The caller ID showed DOT Inspector General. She declined without looking up from her laptop, where American Airlines Compliance Review, urgent, flickered briefly across the screen before she minimized the window. The psychological pressure was mounting perfectly, exactly as she'd experienced it dozens of times before in corporate America. The assumption that volume equaled validity, that confidence trumped competence, that her quiet presence somehow made her the problem to be solved. Mark nodded professionally at Whitmore with the deference reserved for perceived VIPs. Mr. Whitmore, we absolutely appreciate your loyalty to American Airlines. Let me see what we can do to accommodate everyone appropriately. 3 minutes to departure. Accommodate. The word hung in the recycled air, like a threat wrapped in customer service speak. Everyone present understood who would be asked to accommodate whom. But as the pressure mounted around her, Amara continued typing methodically, her calm demeanor a stark contrast to the escalating chaos. Because she knew something they didn't. Sometimes the quietest person in the room holds all the power. I need security assistance at Gate A7. Mark spoke into his radio, his decision to escalate rather than investigate sending shockwaves through the cabin atmosphere. The fluorescent lights seemed to brighten, casting harsher shadows as passengers realized they were witnessing something that would define careers and reshape policies. Amara's grip tightened almost imperceptibly on her seat armrest, knuckles pressing against leather as 15 years of similar confrontations flooded back. The boardroom in Chicago where they assumed she was the interpreter. The conference in Miami where security questioned her executive access. The hotel in Dallas where the concierge directed her to the service elevator. Each memory was a weight added to her chest, but also fuel for the fire burning quietly in her core. 2 airport security officers boarded within minutes, their presence transforming the cabin into an interrogation chamber. Officer Rodriguez and Officer Chun, badges gleaming like shields, approached with the practiced authority of men accustomed to dealing with disruptions. The Instagram Live viewer count surged past 12,000 as phones lifted throughout the cabin, creating a forest of recording devices. The soft pinging of notifications created an electronic symphony of viral anticipation. What's the situation? Rodriguez asked, automatically addressing Whitmore with the deference society had trained him to show successful-looking white men. Seat confusion, Whitmore explained with the smooth confidence of someone who'd never doubted his right to be heard. I'm a Sterling Financial VP, gold status with American Airlines. This woman seems confused about her seating assignment. He gestured toward Amara with the casual dismissiveness of someone shooing away an inconvenience. Amara looked up from her laptop for the first time since security arrived, her dark eyes meeting Rodriguez's with laser precision. "Officer, I'd like your badge numbers for my documentation." The request hit like lightning. In Rodriguez's 8 years of airport security, only federal agents and high-powered attorneys asked for badge numbers immediately. Something in Amara's tone, not aggressive, not defensive, just methodically professional, made his training alarms sound. 4471, he replied automatically, his confidence wavering. "Officer Chin?" 7832. She typed both numbers into her phone with the efficiency of someone accustomed to documentation, creating accountability. The simple act sent ripples of unease through everyone watching. Gate Supervisor Patricia Kim rushed down the jetway, her American Airlines blazer wrinkled from running, stress radiating from her like heat waves. "What's causing the delay?" Her voice carried the weight of on-time performance metrics and corporate pressure, but also a growing dread that this situation was spiraling beyond standard protocols. "Double booking in first class," Jessica explained quickly, her voice higher than usual. "Both passengers have valid tickets for 2A. Patricia's experienced I performed the same unconscious calculation that had damned countless innocent passengers. Expensive suit plus confident demeanor versus casual clothing plus quiet presence. Her training manual had prepared her for many scenarios, but not for the strategic patience Amara was demonstrating. "Ma'am," Patricia addressed Amara with the tone reserved for problems to be managed rather than customers to be served. "We have several available seats in economy that we'd be happy to accommodate you in. We'll even provide a travel voucher for the inconvenience." The words detonated across social media like shrapnel. Instagram live comments exploded. "Are you serious right now? This is textbook racism. Someone call the news." The viewer count hit 18,000. In the back of the cabin, passengers were openly recording now, some narrating for their audiences. "This black woman is being discriminated against in real time. The airline is trying to force her out of her paid seat. This is America in 2024, y'all." But it was the young black professional in 4A who finally broke. "This is bullshit," she said, standing despite the elderly woman's restraining hand. "She has a ticket just like him." The outburst created a moment of electrical tension, where the undercurrent of injustice finally found a voice. Other passengers began murmuring agreement, the cabin atmosphere shifting from uncomfortable observation to active witnessing. 1 minute to departure. Final call. Amara's phone had been buzzing continuously now, each call displaying restricted number. She declined them systematically while typing detailed notes, badge numbers, exact quotes, timestamps, witness descriptions. Her documentation was building a legal fortress in real time. "Time is a critical factor here," Rodriguez interjected, his authority masking growing uncertainty. "We need to resolve this immediately, or both passengers will need to deplane." Whitmore seized the moment like a shark sensing blood. "I completely understand the confusion, but I have a board meeting in Los Angeles tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. sharp. Sterling Financial has significant business interests that simply cannot be delayed." His voice carried the weight of someone accustomed to making others' problems disappear through the sheer force of stated importance. A passenger had started a TikTok live stream with the caption, "Discrimination on Flight 447." Another was tweeting updates with hashtag flight discrimination, hashtag Seatgate, and hashtag Justice for Amara. The businessman in 1C was recording everything while pretending to work, his corporate instincts recognizing a watershed moment when he saw one. Patricia made her executive decision with the swift certainty of middle management protecting quarterly performance metrics. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to move to an economy seat so we can maintain our departure schedule and serve all our passengers appropriately." The words landed like a gavel striking, final and unappealable in their bureaucratic authority. "May I have your full name and employee number, Patricia?" Amara asked, her voice cutting through the tension with surgical precision. The question's clinical specificity rattled Patricia like an earthquake. "My identification? Patricia Kim, employee 2156, yes. For my report." The fact that Amara already knew her employee number hit Patricia like ice water. Her face drained of color as she realized this wasn't just another difficult passenger. This was someone who understood corporate hierarchies and accountability systems at a level that suggested serious consequences. Mark stepped forward with mounting irritation and growing desperation. "Ma'am, you're holding up an entire flight of passengers. We're offering you reasonable alternatives to resolve this situation expeditiously." But Amara was already typing a text message with the calm precision of a general deploying nuclear weapons. Code Blue. Flight 447. Immediate escalation required. The text went to 3 recipients: Senator Martinez, the DOT Inspector General, and someone listed simply as CWAA Corporate. Captain Williams' voice crackled over the intercom with unusual urgency. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a priority communication from ground control. Please remain seated while we address this matter immediately." To everyone except Amara, the timing seemed coincidental. But she finally looked up from her laptop with an expression that Patricia would later describe to her therapist as quietly terrifying. The look of someone who had been underestimated one time too many and was about to demonstrate the cost of that mistake. The cabin fell silent except for the hum of ventilation systems and the soft electronic pinging of phones capturing every moment for posterity. Passengers leaned forward in their seats, sensing that they were about to witness something that would redefine their understanding of power dynamics in corporate America. "Officer Rodriguez," Amara said, her voice carrying across the cabin with crystalline clarity. "Badge number 4471. You asked what the situation was. Would you like me to explain it properly now?" The question wasn't a request, it was an invitation to step through a doorway that, once crossed, would change everything for everyone present. The power dynamic was about to shift so dramatically that witnesses would spend years trying to explain to people who hadn't been there how completely the assumptions had been wrong, and how thoroughly the truth had been about to annihilate every comfortable prejudice in the cabin. "Dr. Johnson?" Captain Williams' voice carried decades of professional authority as he appeared in the cabin doorway, having abandoned the cockpit personally. But underneath that authority was something else, unmistakable respect tinged with concern. "I apologize for the delay in my response to your message." The word "doctor" detonated across the cabin like a sonic boom, followed immediately by the recognition in the captain's voice that this wasn't a routine customer service issue. This was something requiring his personal attention. Whitmore's confidence flickered for the first time, a crack appearing in his armor of assumed superiority. Patricia's phone trembled in her hands as passengers began whispering with the electric energy of witnesses to a massive reversal of fortune. "Captain Williams," Amara said, closing her laptop with deliberate precision that somehow commanded the entire cabin's attention. "Thank you for coming personally. I was hoping we could discuss this situation professionally." She stood slowly, her 5'6" frame somehow expanding to fill all the available space in first class. The simple blazer that Whitmore had dismissed earlier now seemed less relevant than the quiet authority radiating from her posture like heat from a furnace. The Instagram Live viewer count had exploded past 45,000, comments flooding faster than the human eye could follow. "Doctor? CEO Energy. He's about to get destroyed." "Patricia," Amara continued in the same calm tone that had never wavered throughout the escalating chaos. "Since you've had time to process the situation, I trust you understand the gravity of what's happening here." Patricia's hands shook as she fumbled for her phone, typing MedTech Solutions CEO into Google with the desperation of someone trying to defuse a bomb she'd accidentally activated. The search results hit her like a freight train. $2.8 billion revenue. 47,000 employees. Fortune 500. Major corporate contracts with airlines, hospitals, government agencies. Youngest black woman CEO in medical technology. "Jesus Christ," Patricia whispered, the words escaping before she could stop them. But Amara was just getting started. She pulled a business card from her briefcase. Not frantically, not defensively, but with the measured precision of someone who had always held all the cards, but had chosen to let others reveal their character first. "Dr. Amara Johnson, CEO, MedTech Solutions," she said, handing the card to Patricia. "Perhaps you'd like to reconsider your accommodation suggestions?" Patricia stared at the card as if it were written in flames. Her mind was racing through the implications. MedTech Solutions was one of American Airlines' largest corporate accounts. Their CEO was sitting in the seat she'd just tried to forcibly vacate. The discrimination incident was being live-streamed to tens of thousands of viewers. Her career wasn't just in jeopardy, it was already over. Whitmore, sensing the seismic shift in cabin dynamics, tried desperately to salvage his position. Now wait just a minute. I still have my assigned seat and a critical business meeting. Mr. Whitmore, Amara interrupted, her voice cutting through his protest like a scalpel through tissue. She turned to face him directly for the first time since the confrontation began. What did you tell everyone Sterling Financial's annual revenue was? The question landed like a trap snapping shut. We're a significant regional firm with substantial $347 million, she stated with the precision of someone quoting a memorized balance sheet. Sterling Financial, 743 employees. Regional Wealth Management, serving the Northeast Corridor. She paused, letting the numbers settle like sediment. Respectable for a boutique firm. The Instagram Live audience was riveted, comments flowing like water. She came with receipts. The research was ready. He's finished. But Amara wasn't finished. From her briefcase, she produced a thick folder that looked suspiciously like a federal government document. MedTech Solutions generates $2.8 billion annually. We employ 47,000 people across 12 countries. Our annual corporate travel budget with American Airlines alone exceeds your company's total revenue by $500 million. The words hit Whitmore like physical blows. His expensive suit seemed to shrink around him as the mathematical reality of his mistake became clear to everyone present. Our medical devices are installed in 847 hospitals nationwide, Amara continued, her voice growing stronger with each fact. Our research teams hold 1,247 patents. Our corporate contracts include partnerships with the Department of Defense, NASA, and the Centers for Disease Control. She opened the folder, revealing documents with official letterheads and classified markings that made Captain Williams' eyes widen. This morning, I was reviewing our quarterly assessment of airline partnerships. American Airlines has been under consideration for expanded international contracts worth $1.2 billion over the next 5 years. Patricia felt her knees give slightly. The number was so large it didn't initially register as real money. However, Amara continued, and that single word created a moment of absolute silence in the cabin. Our board of directors has concerns about American Airlines' commitment to corporate dignity and discrimination prevention. She turned the folder toward Captain Williams, revealing detailed spreadsheets and official correspondence. The Department of Transportation has been monitoring discrimination incidents across major airlines. American Airlines currently ranks fourth in verified complaints, with a troubling pattern of bias in premium cabin seating disputes. Captain Williams leaned forward to examine the documents, his face growing paler with each page. These weren't customer complaints. These were federal compliance reports with the power to trigger investigations, fines, and oversight that could cripple an airline's operations. Officer Rodriguez, Amara said, never taking her eyes off the folder. Badge number 4471. How many discrimination incidents have you been called to resolve on American Airlines flights this quarter? Rodriguez shifted uncomfortably. We don't typically track. 17, Amara supplied. 17 documented cases where minority passengers were questioned about their right to occupy premium seating they had purchased. 11 of those incidents resulted in passengers being moved to accommodate complaints from white passengers. The precision of her data was devastating. These weren't estimates or approximations. These were the numbers that government auditors used to determine whether airlines received federal contracts or faced civil rights investigations. Your colleague, Officer Chun, badge 7832, responded to 9 of those incidents. Would you like me to provide the specific dates, flight numbers, and outcomes? Chen's face had gone ashen. He realized that their responses to these incidents had been documented and analyzed at levels far above their pay grades. But the most devastating moment was yet to come. Amara's phone rang, and this time she answered immediately. Dr. Johnson speaking. Yes, I'm documenting everything in real time. American Airlines Flight 447, exactly. The discrimination is being live-streamed by multiple witnesses and will be included in our quarterly partnership review. She paused, listening, then continued. That's correct. This is the 4th verified incident this quarter involving American Airlines staff assuming black passengers don't belong in seats they've purchased. No, I don't think a settlement is appropriate. Systematic problems require systematic solutions. Patricia realized she was listening to a conversation between two people powerful enough to reshape entire industries. The corporate implications were spiraling beyond her comprehension. Amara ended the call and looked directly at Whitmore, who had remained frozen throughout the entire revelation. Mr. Whitmore, You made assumptions about my qualifications based on my appearance. You publicly questioned my right to occupy a seat I purchased. You suggested I belonged in economy class. You demanded that airline staff remove me to accommodate your preferences. Each sentence landed like a body blow. Around them, passengers were recording every word, understanding that they were witnessing a master class in how accumulated power confronts systematic prejudice. Those assumptions were based entirely on the fact that I'm a black woman who didn't meet your visual expectations of executive presence, Amara continued. Would you like to reconsider your assessment of who belongs in first class? The cabin atmosphere had become electric with tension and anticipation. Even passengers who had initially supported Whitmore were now recognizing the magnitude of the reversal they'd witnessed. Sterling Financial manages $890 million in assets under management, she continued relentlessly. Your personal travel budget is approximately $47,000 annually. MedTech Solutions corporate travel spending exceeds your entire company's revenue by a factor of 3. She closed the folder with finality. Mr. Whitmore, would you like to recalculate who has more right to be in seat 2A? The question hung in the cabin air like a sword waiting to fall, while 67,000 Instagram Live viewers and countless other social media witnesses waited to see how completely assumptions based on prejudice could be demolished by the simple presentation of facts. The silence stretched until it became almost unbearable, broken only by the soft electronic pinging of phones documenting every moment of what had become a complete inversion of perceived power, competence, and authority. Whitmore's humiliation was total, but Amara wasn't finished. There were systematic changes to be made, and this public moment was going to serve as the foundation for reforms that would protect every passenger who came after her. The cabin had transformed into a corporate boardroom where Amara held every piece of leverage, and everyone present was beginning to understand the true scope of their collective mistake. Captain Williams gestured discreetly to his crew, who moved other passengers toward the back of the aircraft, creating a privacy buffer around what everyone now recognized as a high-stakes corporate negotiation. Mr. Whitmore, Amara said, her voice carrying across the cabin to the 112,000 Instagram Live viewers who were witnessing a master class in strategic power deployment. Your public apology begins now. Whitmore's hands trembled as he faced the forest of phone cameras documenting his humiliation. His expensive suit seemed to hang differently now, as if his diminished stature had somehow altered its tailoring. Sterling Financial's brand reputation was being damaged in real time, broadcast to an audience that included his colleagues, clients, and competitors. I apologize, he stammered, his voice barely audible above the cabin's ventilation system. Inadequate. The word cut through his attempt like a blade through paper. You publicly questioned my right to sit in first class. You told airline staff I belonged in economy. You implied I was confused about my seating assignment because of my race. Address each assumption specifically, with the same enthusiasm you displayed while humiliating me. The precision of her demand left no room for deflection or face-saving. Whitmore understood that his career survival depended on complete capitulation broadcast to a global audience. I publicly and sincerely apologize to Dr. Johnson, he began again, his voice stronger but hollow with defeat. I made racist assumptions based on her appearance. I questioned her right to sit in first class because she's a black woman. I demanded that airline staff remove her from a seat she had purchased because I assumed she didn't belong there. His voice broke slightly. My behavior was discriminatory, unprofessional, and completely inexcusable. Continue, Amara prompted, her satisfaction carefully controlled but unmistakable. I also apologize to everyone who witnessed my behavior. There is no justification for discrimination, and I take full responsibility for the harm I've caused through my actions and assumptions. The livestream comments exploded. Consequences have actions. The humbling was complete. This is what accountability looks like. Meanwhile, Patricia's phone was ringing insistently. She answered with visible terror. This is Patricia. Yes, sir, she's here. Dr. Amara Johnson, MedTech Solutions CEO. The discrimination incident, yes, sir. He's flying here personally, immediately. She ended the call with shaking hands and approached Amara like someone approaching a live bomb. Dr. Johnson, that was our regional vice president. He's chartering a flight to meet with you personally. Could we possibly delay your departure to accommodate that conversation? Amara consulted her watch with deliberate precision. My Los Angeles meetings begin at 8 a.m. tomorrow. Medteca's board of directors will be reviewing our airline partnerships based on this quarter's performance. American Airlines' ability to maintain my travel schedule is now a component of that evaluation. The corporate leverage was breathtaking in its elegance. Patricia realized that accommodating Amara's schedule had become Americans' highest operational priority, superseding even federal air traffic control requirements. Captain Williams stepped forward with new deference in his posture. Dr. Johnson, we can arrange priority departure once this situation is resolved to your satisfaction. Air traffic control has been notified that we have a VIP passenger requiring schedule maintenance. Excellent, Amara replied, opening her laptop to display a comprehensive spreadsheet that made Patricia's breathing become shallow. These are Medteca's current travel metrics with American Airlines. 12,400 annual flights, $847 million in direct bookings, $312 million in ancillary services, $89 million in cargo contracts for medical equipment transport. Patricia studied the numbers, each line item representing revenue that could fund entire regional operations. Her mind was calculating the implications. Medtec wasn't just a customer, they were a fundamental component of Americans' financial structure. Corporate contracts include penalty clauses for service failures, Amara continued, scrolling to sections of the spreadsheet that made Captain Williams lean closer. Discrimination incidents trigger immediate contract review, with potential penalties ranging from $50 million for individual incidents to complete termination for systematic bias. She highlighted specific cells with surgical precision. Today's incident will be documented in tomorrow morning's quarterly partnership assessment with American's executive board. The review will determine whether our 5-year contract renewal worth $4.2 billion proceeds as planned. The number hit the cabin like a physical force. Patricia felt her legs go weak as she realized that her decision to side with Whitmore had potentially cost American Airlines a contract worth more than most countries' GDP. However, Amara said, and that single word created desperate hope in every airline employee present, I prefer systematic solutions to punitive litigation. Captain Williams, I have 3 specific requirements that would resolve this incident constructively. She counted on her fingers with the precision of someone used to corporate negotiations where billions of dollars hung on specific details. First, Mr. Whitmore publicly acknowledges that his behavior was discriminatory, with the same audience that witnessed his assumptions about my qualifications. Whitmore nodded frantically, understanding that his cooperation was the only thing standing between him and complete professional annihilation. Second, every employee involved completes comprehensive implicit bias training within 30 days. Not online modules, in-person education that actually addresses unconscious prejudice and its impact on customer service. Patricia was already taking notes, understanding that implementation would begin before the aircraft reached Los Angeles. Third, American Airlines pilots the real-time discrimination reporting system I've been proposing to your executive team for the past 8 months. Every incident gets escalated to senior management within 15 minutes, with no local discretion for obvious discrimination. Captain Williams recognized the system immediately. It had been part of ongoing discussions between American's leadership and their largest corporate clients, with Medtec leading the push for accountability mechanisms that would prevent incidents like today's from reaching the viral livestream stage. Dr. Johnson, he said carefully, this system would fundamentally change how our industry handles discrimination complaints. Exactly, Amara replied. American Airlines can lead the industry in corporate dignity protection, or you can continue defending incidents like this while losing major contracts to competitors who understand that discrimination is a business liability. She pulled up technical specifications on her laptop that were clearly the result of months of development work. Integration with existing customer service systems, automated Department of Transportation compliance reporting, quarterly analysis for corporate clients, and real-time escalation protocols that prevent viral social media incidents through immediate professional intervention. The elegance of the solution was undeniable. Instead of managing discrimination incidents after they became public relations disasters, airlines could address bias before it escalated to live-streamed humiliation. Patricia's phone rang again, and she stepped away to take another urgent call from corporate headquarters. Her whispered conversation included phrases like immediate implementation, whatever she wants, and cannot lose this account. The discrimination reporting app includes features specifically requested by our corporate travel managers, Amara continued, displaying detailed technical documentation. Real-time incident logging, automatic escalation to supervisory staff, pattern recognition for repeated problems, and quarterly compliance reporting for major clients. She scrolled to budget projections that showed the financial impact. Implementation cost, $2.8 million annually across Americans' domestic operations. Average discrimination lawsuit settlement, $1.2 million per incident. Prevention is significantly more cost-effective than litigation. Mark approached with new humility in his demeanor. Dr. Johnson, what specific training curriculum would you recommend for our customer service teams? Harvard Business School's Corporate Dignity Protection Program, she replied immediately, having clearly researched optimal solutions long before today's incident. 8-hour intensive training, quarterly refreshers, documented completion required for all customer-facing positions. Focus on implicit bias recognition, de-escalation techniques, and legal compliance. Patricia returned from her phone call, looking simultaneously relieved and terrified. Dr. Johnson, corporate headquarters, is authorizing immediate implementation of all your recommendations. The CEO wants to speak with you personally during your Los Angeles layover. Unnecessary, Amara replied calmly. Our quarterly review tomorrow morning will address all partnership issues comprehensively. These 3 immediate actions resolve the current incident satisfactorily. The Instagram Live viewer count had reached 156,000, with screenshots of the corporate data being shared across every major social media platform. Business journalists were already writing stories about the incident and its implications for corporate travel accountability. But Amara wasn't finished. The systematic changes she was negotiating would protect every passenger who might face similar discrimination in the future, transforming a moment of personal humiliation into industry-wide reform that would benefit millions of travelers. These changes benefit every passenger, not just MedTech employees, she concluded, closing her laptop with the finality of someone who had just rewritten the rules of corporate accountability. Systematic discrimination requires systematic solutions implemented with measurable outcomes and executive oversight. 6 weeks later, the transformation was undeniable and deeply personal. Jessica Martinez stood before a training class of 47 new American Airlines flight attendants, her voice carrying the weight of hard-earned wisdom as she shared her story. Dr. Johnson could have destroyed my career that day, Jessica told the riveted audience, clicking to a slide that showed the viral video statistics. For 0.2 million views, 847,000 shares, coverage in every major news outlet. Instead, she chose to educate rather than annihilate. That choice changed my life. The room was silent as Jessica's story unfolded. How her unconscious bias had nearly cost American Airlines their largest corporate client. How Dr. Johnson's strategic response had transformed humiliation into systematic reform. How comprehensive training had opened her eyes to prejudices she never knew she carried. Last week, I successfully de-escalated a similar situation in first class, Jessica continued, her pride evident. A white passenger questioned a young Latina doctor's right to her seat. But this time, I immediately verified credentials, addressed the discrimination directly, and protected the passenger who belonged there. The difference? I understood that assumptions based on appearance are always wrong. The Harvard Business School training program was exceeding all projections across Americans' network. Employee confidence in handling bias incidents had improved 89%, while documented discrimination complaints had plummeted 73% in just 6 weeks. More importantly, the human stories emerging from the reform were transforming corporate culture from the inside out. Patricia Kim had not only survived the incident, but had been promoted to Regional Dignity Compliance Manager, overseeing implementation of Dr. Johnson's reforms across the Northeast Corridor. Her transformation was perhaps the most dramatic of all, from someone who perpetuated bias to someone who actively dismantled it. The real-time reporting system has processed 412 incident reports since launch, Patricia explained to a CNN business reporter covering the story's ongoing impact. 96% are resolved within the 15-minute escalation requirement. The remaining 4% involve serious violations requiring immediate disciplinary action. The technology was revolutionizing airline customer service industry-wide. When a passenger felt discriminated against, they could instantly report it through the app, triggering automatic alerts to supervisory staff and creating digital documentation that prevented he-said-she-said disputes. The system was being studied by Delta, United, Southwest, and even international carriers for potential adoption. But the most powerful changes were deeply personal. Marcus Williams, a young black software engineer from Atlanta, shared his story during a company diversity summit. "I was flying to Seattle for a job interview when a passenger questioned whether I belonged in first class. But instead of the usual runaround, the flight attendant immediately checked the new protocols, verified my seat assignment, and addressed the discrimination directly. For the first time in my life, I felt protected by an airline instead of questioned by it." His experience had become typical rather than exceptional. The systematic reforms Dr. Johnson had negotiated were creating a new normal where dignity protection was standard operating procedure rather than lucky exception. Whitmore's professional downfall had been swift and comprehensive. Sterling Financial terminated his employment within 72 hours of the viral incident, unable to survive the reputational damage his behavior had caused their client relationships. His LinkedIn profile, once showcasing steady advancement, now carried the permanent scarlet letter of viral racism that made him unemployable in financial services. The consequences had rippled through his industry like shockwaves. Other wealth management firms had quietly implemented bias training for client-facing staff, understanding that one discriminatory incident caught on livestream could destroy decades of reputation building. "He lost everything because he couldn't see past his prejudices," observed Dr. Sarah Chun, a workplace psychology professor who had studied the incident extensively. But his downfall created accountability that benefits everyone. Sometimes individual consequences drive systematic change. The financial impact on American Airlines had been overwhelmingly positive despite initial concerns. Customer satisfaction scores had improved 34% overall, with dramatic increases among minority passengers who now felt genuinely welcome rather than merely tolerated. The Department of Transportation had removed American from their discrimination monitoring list after documenting consistent policy improvements. Most significantly, MedTech Solutions had not only renewed their $847 million annual contract, but had expanded it to include international routes supporting their global research facilities. The corporate dignity clause Dr. Johnson had pioneered was now being demanded by other Fortune 500 companies, creating industry-wide pressure for discrimination prevention rather than just incident response. "We're not trying to eliminate human prejudice overnight," Dr. Johnson had explained during her Harvard Business Review cover story interview. "We're creating systems that interrupt discriminatory behavior before it escalates and provide education that prevents repeated incidents." The data supported her approach. Airlines implementing similar systems reported 67% reductions in discrimination complaints, 78% improvements in employee confidence handling bias incidents, and 45% increases in customer satisfaction scores among minority passengers. Other industries were taking notice. Hotels, rental car companies, and even retail chains were adapting Dr. Johnson's real-time reporting protocols for their own operations. The quiet revolution she had sparked was spreading far beyond aviation. The legislative impact had exceeded everyone's expectations. Senator Martinez had successfully introduced the Corporate Dignity Protection Act, requiring real-time discrimination reporting for any business receiving federal contracts. The bill passed with bipartisan support after the success of Americans' voluntary implementation demonstrated both feasibility and effectiveness. Dr. Johnson proved that systematic change is possible when you combine strategic leverage with moral clarity, Senator Martinez explained during the bill signing ceremony. Her approach created a template for transforming discrimination from individual battles into institutional accountability. 3 months after the incident, Dr. Johnson received the National Civil Rights Leadership Award for innovative approaches to corporate bias elimination. But she was more proud of a different statistic: zero discrimination complaints involving MedTech employees across all their airline partnerships. The goal was never personal vindication, she reflected during her acceptance speech. The goal was creating systems that protect everyone who comes after us. Individual incidents matter, but systematic solutions change entire industries. The touching stories continued emerging weekly. A disabled veteran whose service dog was questioned until staff checked new protocols. An elderly immigrant whose accented English triggered bias until training helped employees recognize discrimination. A transgender executive whose identity was respectfully handled through updated sensitivity guidelines. Each story represented someone who benefited from reforms that began with one woman's refusal to accept assumed inadequacy in Seat 2A and her strategic transformation of humiliation into industry-wide accountability. 2 years later, Dr. Amara Johnson sat in Seat 2A on Flight 447. The same route, the same aircraft, even the same departure time. But everything else had fundamentally changed. Jessica Martinez approached her seat with a warm smile of recognition, carrying herself with the confidence of someone who had been transformed by comprehensive education and real-world application. Dr. Johnson, welcome aboard. It's an honor to serve you again. The exchange was brief but meaningful, a moment of connection between two women whose lives had been forever altered by that confrontational evening when assumptions met reality and systematic change was born from strategic response. In the galley, a new flight attendant named David Chun was reviewing protocols on his tablet. The discrimination reporting app had become as standard as safety equipment, integrated so seamlessly into operations that new employees couldn't imagine working without it. That morning alone, the system had prevented 3 potential bias incidents through immediate intervention and education rather than escalation and humiliation. The difference is remarkable, Captain Williams had told 60 Minutes during their documentary on the transformation. We went from managing discrimination crises to preventing them entirely. Our employees feel confident, our passengers feel protected, and our industry learned that dignity protection is profitable. The numbers supported his assessment. American Airlines had become the industry leader in customer satisfaction, diversity metrics, and employee training effectiveness. Their stock price had increased 23% since implementing Dr. Johnson's reforms, driven by improved reputation, reduced legal liability, and expanded corporate contracts from companies demanding dignity protection standards. But the most meaningful change was cultural. In the Dignity in Transit Fellowship program, young professionals from underrepresented backgrounds learned strategic leadership techniques from Dr. Johnson's playbook. 23 fellows had completed the program, each armed with tools for transforming discrimination from individual suffering into institutional accountability. Maya Patel, a 28-year-old tech executive and fellowship graduate, had recently used Dr. Johnson's documentation protocols to address bias in hotel accommodations during a corporate conference. Instead of accepting discriminatory treatment, she had systematically recorded the incident, leveraged her company's $2 million annual hospitality budget, and negotiated comprehensive staff training that protected future guests. Dr. Johnson taught us that quiet power combined with strategic leverage creates more change than loud complaints without solutions, Maya explained during her own TED Talk, which had been viewed 890,000 times. Documentation plus leverage plus systematic solutions equals transformation. The ripple effects continued expanding globally. Airlines in Europe, Asia, and South America had implemented variations of the reporting system. The European Union had proposed legislation requiring real-time discrimination tracking for all transportation companies. The United Nations had invited Dr. Johnson to address their Human Rights Council about corporate accountability mechanisms. But perhaps the most significant validation came from an unexpected source. Richard Whitmore had spent 2 years in professional exile, his career destroyed by his moment of viral discrimination. But he had also spent those years in intensive therapy, bias education, and community service with civil rights organizations. His journey from perpetrator to advocate had been painful, humbling, and ultimately redemptive. I destroyed my own life because I couldn't see past my prejudices, he had written in a Washington Post op-ed titled, How Racism Ruined My Career and What I'm Learning from the Wreckage. Dr. Johnson could have annihilated me completely, but she chose systematic change over personal revenge. Her approach created accountability that benefits everyone, including people like me who need to confront our own biases. His transformation was incomplete and ongoing, but it represented the kind of individual change that systematic reforms could inspire. Some people learned from consequences, others from education, but Dr. Johnson's approach created space for both paths toward better behavior. As Flight 447 reached cruising altitude, Dr. Johnson opened her laptop to review MedTech's latest quarterly report. The discrimination incident column showed zeros across all their airline partnerships, hotel chains, and rental car companies. Systematic change was working exactly as designed. But more importantly, her assistant had forwarded dozens of emails from passengers, employees, and executives sharing stories of how the reforms had protected them, educated them, or inspired them to implement similar changes in their own organizations. Each message represented someone whose experience had been improved by that moment 2 years ago when strategic response transformed personal humiliation into industry-wide reform. The quiet power she had deployed in Seat 2A continued generating systemic change that would protect countless future travelers from similar discrimination. Outside her window, the lights of cities passed below like stars in a constellation of human possibility. Dr. Johnson smiled, understanding that sometimes the most important battles are won not through force or volume, but through strategic patience, documented facts, and the quiet deployment of accumulated power in service of systematic justice. The revolution she had started with a business card and a laptop had become an industry standard, proving that lasting change happens when competence meets strategy, when individual dignity demands institutional accountability, and when quiet power insists on systematic solutions that protect everyone who comes after.